You're busy, you've got a decent practice, but nobody wants to be decent. You want to be great, and you want to have a great practice. So how did the most productive, profitable dentist in the nation balance real life, work, and profits, and somehow make it all seem fun? Well, it comes down to simple, everyday practices. So grab a lunch, join us as we chat with top clinicians and influencers to discover their formula for uncommon success. Are you ready? Then it's time to explore everyday practices with Vicki McManus-Peterson and Dr. Chad Johnson.
For those joining us, this is the formidable Katherine Eitel Belt. What a great friend and mentor and colleague here in dentistry. And I just love you. I love your honesty. I love your vulnerability. I love where we ask you what's your everyday practice, and you come right in with courageous conversations. And you're a lioness for sure. You walk your talk, and I love that. All of our coaches have gone through your lioness principle training. Wouldn't have it any other way. We're about to hire 3 or 4 new PDA coaches, so you're going to get some new trainees in what you're doing. And
new cubs.
New cubs. I love it. And we're going to keep just rolling with this. Is that all right with you, Chad?
Yeah.
That's great.
And Katherine, let me say, I'm starstruck in that I've heard your name around the industry plenty, and it's just really cool to actually have face, one-on-one time here. So
Hey.
Vicki, thanks for the invitation to this awesomeness.
So Katherine, let's wrap up, and because I know it'll continue, right? You can't not be that courageous conversationalist. I mean, you are the author of the unscripted communication technique. So give us one way that teams can be more courageous. Give us an everyday tip, an everyday practice, a habit that would make, I remember coaching a team one time, and one of our team agreements was we agree to be a little less shy. And we agree that even when we feel shy, we could speak up just a little bit. That's how close the team was, right? And so we had to eyedropper some courage with that team. So what would your tip be to be a little more courageous?
Well, first of all, I'll say that when I say courageous conversations, I don't mean that it has to be the life-bending conversation of the world. I think it is, how do we have enough courage to examine what is our role in this, whatever the discourse is, and how could we come at it with a little more self-awareness and a little from a different perspective, because we wouldn't even be thinking about it if what we were doing was working. When I'm giving this to audiences, I'll always say, I want you to think of a conversation you've been avoiding. Like right now, what's a conversation? Because there's nobody in the room, including me, who can't think of a conversation in their personal life or professional life that if they thought that conversation would go well, they'd have it today, right? Because it would make things better. And so that's the piece I'm talking about when I say courageous conversation. So my tip would be that most of us were raised in family units and were brought up in the industry, and we were never taught the skills of how to have a challenging conversation well. And because of that, maybe in our own defense, we look outward in our lives and we say, well, if she would just stop doing that, or if he would start doing this, or I keep dropping hints. I shouldn't have to come out and say blah, 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 or, he can tell I'm upset about it, or we do. And it's all about the other person or the other people doing something different. So this would be better for us, right, and maybe for them. And my tip would be, notice how often you do that and start asking yourself, if I had to say what my piece of this discourse was, what would it be? Is it that I talk too much into it? Is it that I don't speak up enough? Is it that I have a high level of judgment? I've already made decisions about who people are and what their motivations are. Is it that I just haven't learned a way to engage in a way that isn't passive aggressive or isn't negative, full of negativity, those kinds of things? So, because the truth is, there isn't anything we can do about all the other people. The only person we have any possible control over is ourselves, and yet we keep waiting and expecting for the others to change. So I always say to my audiences, this topic, this presentation is going to feel a lot like a personal growth seminar in the beginning, because guess what? It is, right? That you can't get better at these conversations until you explore personally what your place is in it, and in its in it not working for you already.
Wow.
And I think also it is that we can't ask of others things we haven't already figured out ourselves. So learning to get ourselves on a more positive platform before we speak, or learning to get ourselves in a place of more courage, those kinds of things. So it's just really, it is personal growth. That's why we do Unscripted, because I feel like if we could get our heads and our emotions in the right space, the words actually come pretty easily to most of us. It's that we're not in the right space. Yeah.
Katherine, I have a question regarding that. I have a theory why dentists are so good at passive aggressive, and you tell me what your thoughts are on this. I mean, it's just what do I know? But
you're a dentist.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're passive aggressive.
I could be if I'd say it out loud. No, but you know what? I think we're delayed in our conversations a lot when we're in the operatories with patients. And if something goes wrong, we have to wait to have that conversation. And so there are times when we say, it'd be nice if I had a cotton roll, as opposed to, why did you drop that cotton roll, dummy? Because you don't want to say that, or you don't want to say, hey, patient, you know how you're like always closing on my drill? That's pretty dangerous, and that's stupid. So you can't overtly say that. So you find ways to be almost like it trains you to become passive aggressive just naturally, because of you've got to hold that conversation. Something drops and you say, you know what would be nice is if I had a sterile one of these, and you find a way to say it nicely.
I like the way you say that in your radio voice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Catherine, do you think
is that passive aggressive?
Well, that's what I wonder. Does it train
just
you?
kind, or is it kindness?
Well, but see, it starts out as kindness, but then does it become something that then when you go home and you tell your kids, boy, I wish you would have set the table.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Does it train dentists to become passive aggressive because of that?
Like not.
Well, here's
not
what I
trying to
think.
speak the feeling. Yeah.
I think the delay actually works in our favor. So, the basis of dealing with any conflict, I think, is in, I have a 4-point self-check that we teach. And part of that self-check is remembering that this entire exchange is a gift to us. It's a gift to us, and potentially a gift to the other person as well. But for sure, it's a gift to us. So whether that conflict is marching down the hallway at you, or you as the dentist are experiencing it in this moment chairside, however it presents itself, the recognition chairside that this whole experience is actually a gift being given to you and offered to you and offered to you and offered to you until the day you accept it. The day you
Right.
accept it as the gift, you say, I'm actually really glad this keeps showing up, because it keeps showing me there's a place of growth here for me. There's a piece of growth here for me to leverage. And after this procedure, after this day, I'm going to bring my assistants in here, and I'm going to tell them, you know what, I'm really sorry. I realized today I've been frustrated about some things, and I've been hanging on to it and not really dealing with it in a healthy way. And that's going to stop today. And I'm going to start to take on a whole new level of leadership, and I'm going to either get the coaching I need, or I'm going to get whatever I need to figure out how to just say what I need in a way that doesn't sound insulting. It doesn't sound passive aggressive because it isn't. It won't be. And I just want you to know that I'm on it. I'm aware of it, and I'm going to work on it. And I'm going to need your help, or I'm requesting your help. Or I'm asking for your help. And we find a more mature and better way to have this exchange. And what a great opportunity this is for us to grow in our relationship together. And that's a whole new context. Instead of us pushing back against, I mean, people, and every time I deliver this presentation, they say, there'll be somebody there that will say, I avoid conflict at all cost because I hate it. I'm no good at it and I hate it. And I'll say, well, that's a story that you've bought into, and you'll keep buying into it as long as you keep telling that story to yourself and everyone else, just as you just did. But you could tell a different story, because I'll tell you my story, and it wasn't always this way, but I said part of what we do at LionSpeak, or a communications coaching company, and part of who we help communicate are other speakers. And one of the greatest fear of speakers on the stage is that someone's going to raise their hand in the audience and push back and argue in front of the whole audience the principles that are being presented, right? That's a speaker's, especially new speakers, that's one of their greatest fears. And so this will tell you how far you can go with learning to dance with conflict. I've actually gotten so comfortable and so good at the dance, I'm actually disappointed, this is going to sound really strange, when it doesn't show up in my audience. When I don't get someone who raises their hand and disagrees with what I just presented, or pushes back somehow to argue, I'm actually disappointed, because I love the dance. Because the dance gives me one more chance to practice. It gives me one more chance to show that person and the audience and the world that there actually is a better way to have this exchange. There's a healthier, more respectful, non-judgmental way to have this exchange and leave everybody whole in the process. And without the opportunity, I don't get to do that.
Because otherwise it's a straw man. And when they challenge it, you get to show the authenticity of your theory and your message.
Exactly. And so it's letting go of the idea that conflict means there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. And that this is somehow a battle, that if I'm a really good communicator, I'll end up convincing you that I'm right.
Yes.
And when you let go of some of those definitions, those old definitions of communication and resolution, then you get to step into this whole new world of relating. And it is fun. I'm telling you, it's a fun dance for me. And you know what's really interesting about this that I've noticed is the better I get at it, the less it actually shows up in my entire life.
Because you see it coming.
Or maybe, I don't know. I don't have the answer to this yet, but I'm just paying attention to it, because the better I get at it, it's almost like my family is now gone, don't take her on. Because she's gonna, not in a bad way, but like,
No.
He's gonna be able to work through this, and you're gonna be in the work before you even know it.
And they're not going to subconsciously manipulate it.
Yeah. The audience, I think, they see me maybe handle small things, and then it's like, I'm not going to be able to pull her into a fight. And if their intention was to pull me into an argument, I think they recognize very quickly that they're unlikely going to be able to pull me into an argument. And so they don't try. And it's interesting how it just actually shows up less. So,
Katherine, you know what that reminds me of? Is a kung fu master that no one comes up to spar with on the street, because they just go, listen, why would I do that? But you had to go through all that training. Then when you get done with all the training, no one messes with you in the first place, because you're going to yin yang it.
Yeah.
They expect for you to push back and you're going to pull, or they expect you to pull and you're going to push.
We do this cool, I saw it done once, where we have someone come up from the audience and we have them give me equal pressure to my pressure. So when I push, they push, and when they push, I push. And so of course I say to the audience, so I'm matching their resistance with my resistance. And where are we going? And eventually the audience will say, nowhere, you're going nowhere. And I'll say, exactly. So just know that when you meet resistance with equal resistance, and the harder they push, you push back harder. And the more they yell, you yell just as much. And you push back just like that, you'll go nowhere. And then I do it again and I say, okay, go ahead and push again. But this time I keep contact. I keep connection. I'm still connected with you, but I let you push and I just have mild connection. I don't have strong resistance, but I stay connected with you. And pretty soon they push so far, they have to take a step, and then they have to take another step. And pretty soon we're dancing. We're literally dancing.
I love that.
And I say, I'm not saying don't get engaged. I'm saying engage without resistance. Without resistance, stay engaged. And we teach them how to do that. We teach them a process. It's got to be especially in conflict, the process that we teach, that anybody teaches, has to be really easy because you're already inflamed. You're in conflict. If it's really complicated or it's hard to remember, nobody's going to implement it in the process of, in the moment of conflict. And so we've got this really easy process that people can practice and remember in the moment. And that has been super fun to teach. And I feel like while it's helping dental teams improve their level of maturity and ability to communicate through all the things they need to communicate, we're actually creating better humans. It's just giving them the ability to go out into their everyday life, and if somebody rear ends them on the freeway, or somebody is cranky to them at the store, or whatever, wherever it shows up, we've just given them an extra set of tools they didn't have to navigate that. And, my husband is a retired 5th grade school teacher, and when he heard this presentation, he said, math's important and science is important and all of that, but I wish 5th graders would have this in the curriculum, that they would learn it at that early age, how to do this. He said, I think we'd have a different workforce. I think we'd have different families. I think we'd have different relationships because they would know how to have,
Katherine, this is what your new book is about.
Yeah, it's exactly what it's about.
Oh, will you come back when the book is out?
Oh, 100%. Love to.
I love that. You said yin and yang earlier, and I do have my edition of Do Life magazine where you were featured on the cover in the winter edition 2018. And as we're wrapping up the year and going into the new, talk to me about women in dentistry. Why? I know you sit on the board with Do Life, and Anne has given me permission to share that I'm joining you on that board of advisors.
Wonderful. That's such good news.
I'm excited about that. But tell me, your passion is for humanity, all of you, humanity, and you have a particular space in your heart for women in business, women in dentistry. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the, I don't even want to say gender differences because I think that's too generic, but what are you up to here in the Do Life?
Yeah, well, it comes back to this. I do think that I find when I poll my audiences or work with clients that are female, that there is this feeling that we will be viewed or interpreted as bulldogs or harsh or whatever, stereotyped, if we take a stand for what we need and what we want and our own individual passions and desires. And I find that is not only not true, but it's based in our own fear. It really isn't coming from the outside as much as we might think it is. And I really like to change how women approach their own ability to make whatever stand they want to make in the world and whatever difference they want to make in the world, and to do it in a way where we think a lot less about how this is going to land for others and more about following what our intuition and what our wisdom where it's pulling us, and just to step out of the resistance of that and be pulled by that. And I find when I stay focused on that, I rarely take a wrong turn. It's when I worry too much about what everyone else is thinking about. Will I be labeled as aggressive, or will I be labeled as, when I stop worrying about that and say, how can I be authentically true in my communication, in my decision making, in where I place my time and energy and my resources? How can I stay incredibly authentic and true to what's pulling me into it's just like I described in the speech. I was delivering this leadership speech, but what kept pulling at the speech and pulling at the work was this piece on courageous conversations. And so I just stopped resisting it. And I just said, well, what if we just give an entire speech on courageous conversations? And the lid is just, the minute I did it, the lid is just blown off of LionSpeak and all of the speaking engagements now that we have. We're almost full for 2019. And so, and I know when the book comes out, it's going to be the same. So it's almost that, how can we stop? My husband gave a speech at his high school reunion just a few months ago. And one of the quotes he used, I think it might have been Ann Landers, I can't remember, but he had a quote in there that was, I won't say it exactly right, but it was like, in your 20s, you're really worried about what everybody thinks about you. And in your 30s, you're thinking, how could you change what other people think about you? And by the time you get to your 50s, you realize nobody was really thinking about you all that much anyway. It's so true. It's so true. So, you know what, that's kind of for me. I'd like to free women up. I'd like to free them up to just trust a little more, and to learn a few skills so that they can say what they need. I mean, female bosses, female office managers, female team leads, or even if you're new to our industry and young, there are ways to make requests for what you need and want in your life and in your profession, in your career, without being, deemed the heavy-handed,
dominant.
Yeah. And it isn't the loudness of our voices that carries the weight. I had a father who didn't speak that much and rarely spoke loudly, but when he did, we paid attention as kids because he spoke with great power, and he connected with us in a way that we knew he was present in that moment and meant what he said. And there wouldn't be a lot of, he'd already thought it through.
He was intentional about his words.
Yeah, very intentional. And so we learned that, and so that's how wonderful would it be for all people, but certainly for women, to be able to count on their ability to create change and to make good decisions and to express themselves in the world in a way where people listened and walked away having received clarity and inspiration at the same time. So we're on a mission to help all people, but certainly women, to learn to communicate more clearly and more inspirationally when they speak to anyone.
Wow. I can't even believe how quickly 30 minutes has gone by. Chad, I feel like Sarah and Pete are going to be the beneficiaries of this great conversation today.
Right. Katherine, I've even talked with male colleagues about intuition and how we repress what we know we should do. And so the flip side of that, sometimes with men, even utilizing what you could, I guess you could, gender stereotype that women's intuition, this and that. But I said, guys, we have intuition. We hate listening to it, but we know what's right sometimes. And where that conversation comes from is, 6 months ago, you should have fired her.
I know.
But
or even when you hired her, there was something in your gut that said, man, the resume looks great, but something here, but I'm going to hire her anyway. And how many I've certainly done it.
Yes.
We have it's been said that we're the only human mammal on the planet that has a large enough egoic brain that it will have a conversation with the intuition. Every other mammal on the planet is 100% guided by that intuitive force, because that intuition has been developed over the millennia. It's ancient wisdom, and so it's not wrong. But we're the only ones with this large enough and largely developed brain that actually will, converse with it says, oh, don't worry about that right now, or I'll figure it out later.
And fight against it. Right.
And talk yourself out of it.
That's right. And, physicians have said for years that they get lots of patients that come in saying, I'm so glad I listened to my gut. They'll find some, diagnosis, and they'll say, well, I'm really glad I came in. They said, but the worst ones are the ones who say, I really wish I would have listened to my gut, because I knew something was wrong a long time ago and I didn't pay attention, and now I wish I would have. So I think it's a good example of, even in our healthcare arena, intuition is huge. And I think we still have to do the work, but just allowing that to have a little more influence in our lives and trusting it a little bit more is pretty powerful. Certainly is in communication.
Yeah.
So Katherine, tell us about your workshops. You're changing all the time. Which programs are you offering?
Right now, we've got 2 workshops right now that we're really excited about. We've been giving them for a little while, but they're really going well. One is our Leaders of the Pride, and that's where we really take a deep dive into courageous conversations. It's a 2-day workshop. We've got one this coming year in Ohio in May, and another in San Diego in November. And those are great for owners, leaders, office managers, team leads, anybody who wants to improve their leadership communications with their team or with anyone. That workshop is a real deep dive into that. We've sent office managers back, and owners have called us and said, she's a new person. She's a new person in our team meetings, or he, new person in the way they communicate. And so that's our intention. The second workshop is our speakers workshop. We're calling that one, you'll find interesting, Courageous Presentations. And so, because it is a conversation from the stage. And so we have, people who want to be speakers, people who are already speakers, people who are working corporately, but they need public speaking as a part of their tool set. And so, that's also a 2-day workshop that we do to help people land their message the way they want from the stage in a really engaging way.
And when is that one coming up?
So we have that one in March, San Diego. We're also doing that one in May in Ohio, and San Diego again in November. So
nice.
Next year.
Nice. Well, it is such a pleasure every time I get to spend time with you. And gosh, the last time we were together almost a week. So like half an hour feels like 2 seconds.
I agree. Let's not let it be that long in the future.
Exactly. So Chad, I will let you ask Katherine our famous question.
So Katherine, you have 1-word response. It's either one or the other, and don't overthink it.
Okay.
Bacon or eggs?
Eggs.
There we have it, folks.
We raise chickens, not pigs, okay?
Nice.
Pigs.
All right.
She literally has a farm. It's awesome. Well, again, Katherine, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to all of following you and your book coming out next spring.
I'm just so delighted to be on. Thanks for having me as a guest.
Bring your lunch or take us to the gym again next week to improve your everyday practices. Also, subscribe on iTunes, follow us on social media, and sign up for our email list. Now get out there and win with everyday practices.